Kate Mila Falcha, welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. It's time for our Saturday book, and we are doing The Convoluted Universe, Book 2 by Dolores Cannon, and this will be video number 2, part 2. I try to write the part at the very beginning under the description so that you can find it easily. But for anyone who's new, and if you don't know, I try to do a book every week. Sometimes the book will take longer. Last week we finished 6 videos on the Convoluted Universe Book 1, and I did start briefly the first video on this just to get started, just to warm everybody up. So we've been following this for a while now. We've been diving into Dolores Cannon's books, and they're very interesting. Just briefly, for people who don't know, she has died. She died in 2014. She was a hypnotherapist who discovered that with a handful of people, she would be able to, she treated people for smoking and weight loss and biting their fingernails and phobias, the typical thing. But over time, she discovered that some people went into a deeper trance and talked about their past lives. And other people, sometimes the same people, and other people actually would speak, but it would be some other being or entity speaking through them. I guess you call it channeling. I don't know if that's technically correct, but you know, basically the same thing. A third party speaking through a subject, a hypnosis subject that she was taking notes and recording. Very interesting books. I have not read them before, so this is revelatory to me. Very interesting books. So let's start video number 2, The Convoluted Universe. I hope the noise doesn't bother you. I have my little space heater on. It's very cold here today, and you know, old house, no heat, so I've got my little heater on, and I will turn it off for the next video if it's driving anyone crazy. I apologize. So this session was in 2001, and just for those who don't know, her books are a collation of hypnotic sessions that she had with a variety of different people from a variety of different countries around the world and over decades. So she would wait until she had a book worth and the full knowledge she needed to complete the book on a given topic. And so sometimes also, I find this really interesting, sometimes she'd start working with people, a topic would come up, somebody in China, somebody in Europe, and somebody in Canada that she would put in a trance would all continue the conversation. That's weird enough. They didn't know each other. None of this stuff had been published. It wasn't common knowledge. We're talking the 70s, the 80s, the early 90s. This was a culmination, this book. It's book 2, so it's a lot of sessions about the same subjects. So she would wait, and sometimes her work would disappear, and she was told, we're not gonna let you publish stuff. These beings would tell her, we're not gonna let you publish stuff if we feel that the world is not ready. Tapes would mysteriously disappear and then reappear, and it wouldn't just happen at her house. She made copies, and it would happen at all the places where she had left copies. Really strange stories. So let's move forward. This is a session from 2001, one of her more recent sessions. She was now meeting more and more people. She would put them under, and they would remember this rich narrative of past life experience. So an example, the subject's name is Mary. Now a lot of these people, she's changed the names, she's changed the descriptions, she's changed the location because they wanted to remain anonymous. And I am synopsizing what is essentially pages and pages and pages of dialogue. These people are under trance. They don't always speak in full sentences. The ideas come out. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 pages to get really the point of it. So I am summarizing things, and I would strongly recommend reading these books just because there's so much more to them than I can really provide. Anyway, Mary, the subject, she's in a tall, she sees herself under trance in a tall, huge building, very weird, very unique, something she would not have recognized while awake. It was elaborate and colorful in ways that she could not describe with the English language. When she looks down, she sees herself as a male in very elaborate robes, and she feels like she is something of a monk, some kind of spiritual person. And she's in a room full of people going through books and records as like a library. She seems to be in a library is my next sentence. It is the ancient hall of knowledge. It's a vast collection of all the knowledge available in the world. The walls are actually made of rock, and from the description, Dolores is thinking maybe this is underground. Mary says this name of the city is, she tries to say it and she struggles with pronouncing it. And it's something like Shangri-La or Shambhala. I don't think they ever really come to an agreement about what the name of the place actually is. And it has been hidden underground for its own protection. It has its own light and water sources, and it she sees these series of tunnels, so it's connected to an elaborate system underground. Cannon says that many regressions seem to indicate that we humans are meant to be accumulators or recorders of information, that this is our most important job. It's why we're here, to preserve information. And that information is actually encoded in our DNA, not just information about us. It cracks me up because you'll hear modern researchers talking about junk DNA. Do you really think that there would be junk DNA? And at the time that Cannon was getting this information, DNA study was in its infancy. I don't want to exaggerate, but it was a long time ago. And they didn't know what they know now. And now they know, for example, that there is light in your DNA and information in your DNA. And what message she received is that it's encoded in our DNA, and it's all in our subconscious. All of our past lives are in our present day subconscious. This is never lost. Take it from life to life. She's told that now this is in the book, and I know a lot of people who watch my videos are comfortable with this, but I also know I have a lot of new viewers, and I don't want people to be put off by the subject matter. I would suggest go back and listen, and I have something even more interesting coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But she's told that one of the reasons why extraterrestrials come to the planet, which they always have, one of the reasons is to record information, to gather and record information. The place that this subject is deep underground, and there are pyramids above it and a high mountain range around it, but they're not in Egypt. And many things are hidden in these mountains. They're not going to say where they are. Keep them hidden. She said this was originally a spaceport a long time ago. And the pyramid is not important. What's important is what's hidden underneath it. Now, we're not talking about pyramids in Egypt, which are of a different importance, which we will eventually talk about. The pyramid is a marker in this case. The subject sees the past with spaceships, going into the earth and transporting supplies, transporting people to buildings underground, and she says that she gets the impression there might even be access through a volcano. She's still looking at the past. She sees native people living on the other side of the mountain who are primitive and scared by the many things they see in the sky. There's a light at the bottom of a deep entrance with technology that she can't describe because it's not familiar to her. It's not of this earth. They are in this space, this civilization, these unknown people, because there was a war going on at the time that she has regressed, and the war is destroying the planet, and the warriors are aliens coming from elsewhere. They're mean, they're fierce, they're warriors. There's a battle going on, and she says to Cannon, as this old man in a robe from the past, that there are many different races of aliens here on the Earth. They're mining resources, and war is caused by a big light, some sort of, I mean, I guess she doesn't use this term, but I'm thinking laser of some sort, or energy weapon, and it has devastated the planet. Many have died. Many have been taken off planet to save them, and many survivors are now living underground. Now, this is in our past. It's also allegedly in our future, which we're going to get to. So there was massive destruction, and it's now cold and dark. Records were taken underground to preserve them, and they contain the knowledge of earlier civilizations that we know absolutely nothing about, before Atlantis, before Lemuria, before all of these mythologized, hinted at existences that we're told didn't really exist. According to these people who are regressed, yeah, they actually did. And I would recommend The Dawn of Everything. It's a very, very good book, and it puts into perspective our severe lack of archaeological knowledge and anthropological knowledge. It doesn't negate present day knowledge, it just augments it. It's very interesting. So she's told that the technology these people are using are from alien races, and she's told about how our DNA was mixed. Mary sees herself as a light being, an intermediary, bringing information from the light source to people in the library. So she has a physical body, but she communicates as light with light. So these people go there to learn, and it brings the information that they can then learn. Eventually, some of them will return to the surface, but it's a long time off. Mary is the voice of loving beings that are here to help preserve all knowledge. And many humans and other beings, like ETs, live underground and are cooperating. This is in our past. And we'll get to what else. The building and the record keeping began long before Atlantis. Some humans were highly evolved, and some humans remained more primitive. There was a third place where mutated people were treated very badly, and this is a repeating story coming out of many, many different trance subjects, that DNA hybridization experiments were done and got out of control. They moved from increasing knowledge and scientific inquiry into sadism and abuse, and contributed to the downfall of civilization. Mary sees a meeting of a galactic council that is trying to stop the ones that are doing the mutations because it's destructive and cruel. These evil ones are mining gold and doing experiments, and they were discovered by the council and stopped. They were asked to leave, but they're very warlike, and the council moved people to a safe place, but the destruction came too quickly. Very few survived. It was a dark time. Other planets were affected because, unbeknownst to what we think we know, our planet is energetically connected to the entire galaxy and beyond. What happens here affects other places. It's one of the universal laws, which we'll talk about soon. So this was a galactic war. Mars was made barren. There was actually life on Mars, and it was made barren. And there was fighting in a variety of different places in the galaxy, all at the same time, not just on Earth. There is this Council of 12 she talks about that was also discussed by other subjects in all of Cannon's other books. I'll probably repeat myself a lot here because it kind of blows my mind that these disparate people from faraway places over a variety of different decades, who from absolutely different walks of life with no contact with each other, and until this book that we're talking about was published, there was very little information like this. They all say the same stories, and I think that's pretty remarkable. I mean, explanations could be made about mind reading, etc., sharing the ether, whatever, but I just think it's remarkable. She said there was an Atlantean misuse of power and technology that led to this galactic war, and negative beings were aligned with people with low energy, low vibration, low goals that were living on the earth in Atlantis, and they helped, the aliens helped the bad guys, basically. And the ones that want to help are capable of preventing all this, but there's a rule, a law of the universe that you cannot interfere with free will. And they had to let it happen. They could mitigate it, they could augment people's ability, they could help people, they could role model. They cannot interfere and stop it, because it's our journey to succeed or fail. She told there was much change, and there is much change to come. The people of Atlantis and previous civilizations forgot who they were. They got caught up in the material world. They forgot their enlightenment, and they became imbalanced. And this was allowed because consciousness had to go deep into the realm of darkness to learn about the light. It's a cycle. Difficult to understand, but we'll take it on face value that it's a cycle, and in order to learn, you learn from your mistakes, essentially. So some indigenous people had been removed, and they were brought back to start over after things calmed down. The earth did slowly heal. Small groups of beings did return to help in various places, which accounts for people looking different and cultures being so different. Some were humanoid, some were not, some were dark. Dark not in looks, dark in behavior, and have turned to the light. Some still try to hold control and power. They all live in Washington, D.C. So this is all coming full circle, and changes are coming for us. And I think a lot of people actually feel that. This is my aside, that I think a lot of people actually feel that. There is great beauty to come and light where there was once dark, but the cycle has to be completed first. Right now, we can't see what's right in front of us because it's like there's a veil over our eyes. We live in a multi-dimensional universe, and this is what she's told. It's not me pontificating, it's what I read in the book. Multi-dimensional universe, and it's like we can't see ultraviolet and or infrared, and we can't hear tones that dogs can hear, and we simply don't have the organs of sensory input adequate to what's out here around us. You know, like AM, FM radio, the internet, all that stuff is floating around, but you're not hearing it, unless of course you have a filling. Anyway, so we can't see, it's like a veil, and many light beings have come to help, and many have come to help in physical form. They, look like us, and they're able to either manifest that, or they exist like that on their own planet. Sometimes there's different ones, it depends. But the lesson, the message that they wanted to give us is that we are all timeless, that there are many other dimensions and reality, and also many complete underground cities still today. So Cannon does a new session with a guy called Bob, and he is led by a guide under trance. He says he's being led by a guide to a huge cavern with a roof. It has buildings and trees and light and plants and animals, and it's all underground, and it has existed for millions of years. He sees familiar animals and odd animals. He says he sees things like the Loch Ness Monster. He says he sees a computer down there that's one of the largest in the universe. It covers miles and acres, and beautiful garden areas and chairs that enfold and transport the sitter to anywhere in the universe they think of wanting to go. Also, teaches this chair anything kind of like, they describe this, now keep in mind, this is before virtual reality, but that's what she describes. Bob describes. There are little portals or stargates that you can actually physically travel. There are high-speed underground tunnels with trains. So you have these physical options, but you also have more metaphysical options for travel. Countless similar planets exist in the universe, and they are hollow. There's a continuous fleet of interstellar ships. And as far as what the Earth is created of, it's not completely hollow, but there's a very in-depth description, which we'll get to at another time. And I'm going to build up to it, so I'm not being inconsistent here. As I said, this information is sort of titrated to her over time from different people, and eventually you get a bigger picture. She said there's continuous fleets of interstellar airships going back and forth, but they use cloaking devices, and most people don't see anything at all. On Earth, there is a frequency barrier, partly because of the density of our existence. But we're changing to a new frequency, which is why more weird things are happening. It's why people are more interested in this. We're rising up in energy, and we're becoming more open and interested. I talk to people about this stuff now, and 20 years ago, I've always been interested in this kind of thing, but 20 years ago, I can imagine the reaction I would have gotten. So, we are of much interest to galactic individuals as they observe us and observe our change, because they are watching the creation of a new Earth. And Cannon asks, well, wait a minute now, you're talking about cities inside the Earth. What about magma? So let's, apparently the explanation was too much for me, so she says, we don't think of the Earth as being hollow because we think there's magma at the center of the Earth. And the answer from these trans people is, that's one of those cute little stories they get you to believe on the surface. They tell you all sorts of untruths. Actually, your surface of this planet is 800 miles thick. Underneath that, it's entirely hollow. The sun that we have inside the Earth, is 600 miles in diameter. It was brought in millions of years back and installed there, but the people who remain here are going to be inside the planet after whatever devastation occurs. It's not affected inside, it's only affected on the outside. The 800 miles within the crust is where your planetary magnetism actually comes from, not from the center. Your volcanoes all come from the friction of rocks sliding back and forth within the frame. The center is very hollow and, of course, has the sun, as I've indicated. All other planets are very similar to the same construction, so with the friction of the rocks sliding upon each other, that builds your volcanoes. All your volcanoes are subsurface. Maybe a couple of them go down 200 or 300 miles, but they don't go all the way to the center of the planet. The center of the planet is not magnetic, because if that were to happen, I would suspect, and I'm not one who can really speak upon that kind of thing, but if a major other planetary body coming into the solar system brushes by the Earth, this is what you would have happen. And he goes like that. So that's interesting. No wonder I flunked physics. It's all wrong. I knew it. Okay, so if the Earth were... Okay, so he explains, and I tried to summarize it, and I can't read my handwriting, but I remember what I wrote, that if the Earth were solid and were magnetized, other planets and meteors and stars, and nothing could move around because the magnetic attraction and repelling would be constantly tipping things and attracting things, and it just wouldn't work. We've made a mistake thinking that that's exactly what's going on. And then she's told that where you reincarnate can be anywhere. It depends on what it is you want to learn. And you are active in deciding where that will be. Now, we've had some discussions here with some other people about, is that true, or is it more physics that opposite energies attract, or similar energies have to work together? Well, I'm sorry, I don't have all the answers. Not today, anyway. We don't know. That's the puzzle. That's what we're here to learn. So when you reincarnate, you could be anywhere on any planet, and you can live without end underground. Apparently, the people there don't age the way we do. But you stay wherever it is that you're supposed to be until you're ready for the next level of lesson or whatever. Bob, the subject, says, I'm here now in a low-key vacation sort of life as an observer. He's got kind of a cushy life as a human being here, and he's just here to watch, pay attention. I mean, subconsciously, spiritually. So, chapter 6, Escape from Atlantis. This new subject is Marie, who is an OB nurse, and in her trance, she says she's in the little boat caught in a current, and 360 all the way around her, all they can see is water, and they're looking for safety. She knows that that's what's going on at the moment. They have no control over their boat. They feel like they're escaping and hoping to reach someplace safe. They left where they were, and you know, she's sort of coming into the middle of her own life, and so doesn't know for sure, but they left to escape, and lots of people were escaping by boat, and the only boats that nobody wanted were the smaller boats, so she and a few others volunteered to go on this smaller boat and just took a few helpful things, and they're going to hopefully land someplace safe and establish a new life. She had worked in a temple, learning the use of energy to make life better. She worked with healing and helping people, and she wasn't an exalted one. She was a student, but she was making progress. Other people in the boat had been assistants in the temple, and they all fled together. She was learning to use a crystal device and energy of it to help people balance and heal, and learning to use the mind with crystal energy together. And this is stories we've heard before. I believe in the book Jesus and the Essenes, they talk about this similar contraption. She knew how to use touch energy to heal people, like Reiki kind of, and she was also learning to control the weather, because at the time they were having a drought. She was also learning to counteract the evil ones with negative energy who were creating chaos and creating unrest. That's our job now. Oh my God. Eventually, there just were too many with negative intent, and they couldn't, the good guys couldn't overcome the bad guys. So they decided to flee with the knowledge that they had to a safe place, because they knew bad things were coming. They knew that earth changes were getting worse, that earthquakes that would lead to land disappearing. The negative ones wanted control. They were misusing energy to turn people away from the light into fear. They're intentionally causing fear, intentionally being cruel. Boy, I wonder who that reminds us of. And because when people are fearful, they're controllable, as we're seeing. Oh, and I wrote a little note to myself. The right wing gets the media to do that to the base. Yeah. Anyway, even some of them saw that, some of the bad guys saw that they'd gone too far and they tried to flee. The good people divided up the information, actually written scrolls and crystals, and they left in different directions, hoping to save something somewhere, hoping somebody would eventually survive. They had to use physical boats, because those with the ability to levitate and use their mind energy to travel didn't, because there was just a chaos of negative energy. It kind of overwhelmed the good stuff. They also needed to be able to have actual physical information written down to pass on to people, because if something happened to them. They existed on a small amount of rations. They, in real life, you know, before all this stuff happened, they ate a high energy grain cake, and they took stuff with them. They had sips of water. They slept a lot to conserve their energy. And they finally reached the shore and were greeted by people who looked, in the description, Egyptian. And they were able to communicate through telepathy, not verbal language. They have had weather extremes stormy seas, and they knew something was wrong. They knew something was happening. They could feel it. I think this must sound very familiar to everybody listening to this book. The Atlanteans didn't share their full story when they landed. They didn't know who they could fully trust, so they told the people on the shore where they landed, we've lost our home, we're looking for a new place. And they realized right away that this new place was far less advanced than them. They hid the crystals and scrolls, and they hoped that they would be able to find students who would be receptive and capable of understanding and learning. They heard rumors that a few others had survived and landed in different areas. They hid stuff in the pyramid and in an interdimensional place that will require the right time and the right energy to find it. It's like an invisible place until the time coincides with the energy, and that's not something that you can just make happen. We have to evolve to that point. It's inside a stone. The access is not visible. They'll need a special mental energy and special symbols, and we haven't either developed or figured out the combination of those two things yet. They can search all they want. They're not going to find physical stuff like King Tut's tomb. This stuff, they manipulated the stone and hid things and then manipulated again, and it's well and truly invisible. The right person will have to incarnate with the symbols in their subconscious, and they're waiting for the right time. They also need certain learning in this existence and this time, and it's all about their thoughts. Their thoughts are the key. So many have this ability and don't know it. I mean, we've got abilities we don't know we have. This is what all these books have been saying over and over, to the point now where I just feel like, well, that's got to be true. Sure sounds right. We all have abilities that we don't realize, and we will recognize each other. The people who are interested in this kind of stuff, that's the start of it, is what she's been told. Most people have this ability but don't recognize it. Eventually they will, and the more they hear it, the more it's like a flower opening. It'll dawn on people, and you can manifest it or as intuition. And the symbols are a universal language. Crop circles have something to do with this. Crop circles, every time you look at a picture of a crop circle, according to the messages she's gotten, it triggers subconscious knowledge, and you recognize it, and it helps that knowledge to come to the fore, which is why people are so completely obsessed with crop circles. They feel that they're important, and they are. There's a ton of messages in one little symbol. We haven't figured them out. So Cannon's been told before that ETs have universal language made of symbols, and each is like a block of information, and the messages are given telepathically when you look at them. A little bit like hieroglyphics or cartouches. Where do you think the Egyptians got this stuff? And that little clump of symbols says a million things, and your subconscious recognizes it even when your earthly brain is worried about, I don't know, 90 Day Fiance. So some people actually report getting telepathic messages on beams of light. They'll see symbols in the beams of light. Cannon has noted in a couple of her books that she's heard these stories from a variety of people, and that they will find themselves drawing stuff compulsively and they don't know why. Well, that's why. And here we go. I keep kind of remembering what I read. Crop circles also have blocks of information. So you see it, you may not understand it, but the information is downloaded at a cellular level, and you've got it already in your subconscious, and it works together, and you will know. In the future, you'll have the knowledge when you need it. And that's really interesting. It can combine with what you were born with, and it can add to it. So you're born with the subconscious knowledge of the past. Now you're getting extra. It's like graduate school, right? So information, there truly is, this is true according to these people, information put under the paw of the Sphinx. And it may involve tunnels and chambers, but as with all the other stuff having to do with the construction in Egypt, until we're ready, we're not going to find it. Pyramids were built with the help of ETs. They were already ancient when the Atlanteans came in the little boats. They used energy manipulation to levitate the stones. The earlier Egyptians, the people that lived there, were not in any way advanced. The ETs brought the advancement and helped them learn how to levitate stones. The Atlanteans knew how too. The pyramids were part of the energy amplification system that the ETs brought. The pyramids are vibratory. They were centers of learning. They were never tombs. Once again, somebody else is telling us they were never tombs. Almost, they're centers of energy and learning and vibration, and they're almost like another dimension because of the energy. They were a center of power and energy. And ETs were hoping that this ability would be used for harmony and for good, but eventually it was misused for negative energy, and there's nothing that they could do about it because free will. So if you're given knowledge, you must learn to use it and learn to use it for good. And some people are just not ready to be shared with. In the wrong person, it can be a disaster. And that's what happened with the stealth bomber. We'll get to that eventually. A very interesting story. There must be discriminatory behavior in the part of the humans. It's a huge responsibility. So chapter 7, ancient knowledge. Now this is from a session she had in Montana in 2002. The subject was in a trance and sees, I can't remember if it's a man or a woman subject, sees himself as a 14 or 15-year-old girl on a coastal sea town being forced to move to live in a temple because she has abilities that have been recognized, and she's brought into the temple to teach skills and develop these abilities. She can see the future. She's not allowed to sing, because when she sings, things happen. Because song is sound, and sound is tones, and it's vibration, and she has power she doesn't know how to control. And she sings under trance for Cannon, and pretty soon her voice goes out of hearing range. Cannon can't hear it. And they knew that there was a really high-pitched tone somewhere, but it was coming out of her. Later, she said that sound, she was taught how to use it to open doors into other dimensions, portals. She was first able to do this when she was 5 and didn't know how to control it. She saw the future. She saw men in charge, and they eventually tried to teach her how to change the future, how they wanted to control the world. Good stuff for them and tragedy for other people, and she wouldn't do it. There were 3 ways that the world could go. There were 3 different doors, and this is a major power, a major control, and this was way before even religion was organized. So, you know, there have been cycles of this kind of nonsense. What I'm saying is MAGA existed before under a different guise. How does that scare everybody? She sees all their negative control leading to a disaster because she can see the future, and they want her to stop, and she can't because they want her to stop looking at the future. They don't want her to tell people what's going to happen because they want to have control. And she won't stop doing the good stuff because she wants to stop the negative. Her plan is to learn all of their gifts and, you know, take the teachings that they give her and then to use that against them to stop them for the good of the people. She tells Cannon, we are light inside, and we must realign it when it gets fractured. It's our job to keep that light working. She says she sees on the ceiling a solar system of light, and it's used with tones to create changes for each person to realign their energy, and it's done in a zodiac. So depending on when you were born, depends on what part of the light will heal you to get you back into alignment. And as long as you get your light aligned, you won't age. I could see clinics in Beverly Hills selling that. That's what, that's basically, when they talk about using things for evil, using them for vanity and that kind of thing. So the men in control are mad at her for helping people heal, because this power is supposed to be for their benefit. And it was considered the reserve of the very rich. And they wanted to charge the poor all their money. I mean, this must be an HMO. They wanted to charge the poor all their money, and the rich would get away with whatever. And she sees that as a result of this kind of greed and corruption and misuse of power, that life is coming to an end in her time and place. And these men have been dumping negative energy, and all this negative energy is accumulated. And she told them, this is going to erupt. You're going, all you're doing is accumulating. It's going to come to a head. It's going to erupt. And they don't believe her. They think that she can send that negative energy to destroy their enemies. And and then they get scared of her. That's right. Now I'm remembering. They get scared of her. They're afraid that she's going to hurt them, destroy them, because of her power. They know she's so powerful. So they watch her, and eventually she's drowned on purpose. She reincarnates into a desert land and has no power, and takes her many generations to return to that same level. This time, women are in charge, and they're leading with love. Well, there's a gigantic shocker for everybody. Eventually, almost all of the doctors in this civilization will be women. Healing comes through feminine, the masculine and feminine. We're not talking gender, although we often are. We're talking negative, whoops, my prejudice is showing, masculine and feminine energy that needs to be balanced, the yin and the yang. And that feminine is where the healing comes from. Earth civilization have grown, and the cycle has turned many times. She's told again, as she's been told many times, there are huge chunks of history we know nothing about. So now Cannon has a new person in a trance who describes a large hall with columns that go 60 feet up to a domed ceiling. This person is working with other women, so it's a she, working with other women to adjust an energy field. Men are not allowed in. There are different groups. The old women also do this separately, because as you get experience, your energy changes. They teach the younger groups, and then it's passed on and passed on. The subject describes the process of tones that change energy to correct sun flare energy. So they're really doing interesting things. The sun energy can cause disturbances for some people, for fish and plants, and that's, other things. And they're easing the energy of the sun. Oh, this is interesting. I'd forgotten this. They asked for spiritual help, and were able to create a bubble of energy to mitigate some negative energy. So something has changed on Earth, and because of the change, the subject doesn't know quite yet what it is. Because of the change, angelic beings can't help us the way they used to. There was a cataclysmic event, and there's another one coming, and it's not good, and they can't prevent it anymore. The radiation is, now this is in the past, the radiation will destroy everything, and these souls will sleep for a long time until it's right to start over, until the time is right on Earth again, like the radiation goes away. So now, once again, she's told, we're in a time of awakening. More people are discovering they have abilities. More people are realizing this stuff is not science fiction or religious superstition, that it's actually true. The subject says that in this past time, radiation fried everything, and eventually she sees that there were a small number of survivors, and Earth has more land mass between the Middle East and Africa, and it's much different. Just everything's different. And because the cause of this disaster is the misuse of energy combined with the sun energy to a bad result. So they were manipulating sun energy, and somebody didn't do it right. They destroyed the atmosphere, the atmospheric balance, and it increased sun radiation. They ended up with a desolate, dry, barren environment and survivalist mentality. There was no sophistication. They thought they needed more power, but what did they need more power for? That's the real question. More power is not better when it goes against the natural order. So now history is repeating itself, and then the darkness and the sadness descended on souls, and they had agreed to be there during this time. Some came as record keepers. That's the thing they keep repeating in these books, is even when things are really hard, the people who are going through it, whether they know it or not, subconsciously, they agreed to be here for a role to fill. And even if it's just energetically they were here, they have a purpose. And we have to start looking at events on Earth more that way, which is really hard to do. So that history keeps repeating itself, and it has to unfold this way for us to learn lessons. We're very slow to learn lessons. And when this last cataclysmic event happened, it was very shocking for many people at every level. They simply did not believe it would happen. So now these souls are here again. Things have been getting good again, and souls are remembering, but we're also destroying things again, and it just simply can't be tolerated. You know, the guys in charge are getting a little tired of it. If mortals try to rule the power of the earth will counteract it, period. So now, a new session with a subject called Carol. She's a psychic working to uncover secrets in Egypt. It's very interesting. So she goes into a trance, and she sees clay dwellings that have pastel colors. They're sort of stacked like pastel clay boxes, like a mountain of dwellings with strange angled roofs and very little vegetation. It's a large city of these strange buildings. She saw herself as a 14-year-old girl with a necklace of a red stone on a chain, which was a tool meant to keep her heart chakra open. She had always had knowledge of how to use different stones, and in the past life and in the present life. She got help from the beautiful ones, the oneness, the source, the beings of light. This is all terms that she puts out in trance. The dark forces have to be careful of these. We have to be careful of them, and they have to be careful of us because we are more powerful. People are not all awake, but many are awakening, is once again from somebody new the message we're getting. Her physical family loves her, but they don't fully understand her because she's psychic and it freaks them out. They know she's different, and they must let her do what she needs to do, and they don't interfere with her work. The stones that each child in her group wears, because she's in a group, are for different energy centers. The blue is for communion, bringing forth information. The yellow is for health and sacred balance. The green stones are for healing and maintaining the balance of the earth and communicating with other planets. They also communicate with vegetation, with plants that tell them how to use them. So they don't just cut things and try to figure out what to do with them. The plants communicate, use me for XYZ. They don't need to destroy an entire plant to use it. They access its consciousness and subsume its energy. She talks about mind travel using vehicles that function with the mind and electromagnetism, and she's not the first one. We've heard this story a million times now. She sees a shift or a darkness coming, and she knows that there's nothing she can do in this lifetime. Because some won't join in the awakening process of the oneness, we will do what we can while we can, but she sees darkness coming, and in the past, her group formed a circle around a stone that was in the center that brings light. And something happened, and she hears screaming and explosions, and she can see darkness approaching from the west. She says it's a mountain of debris and water and energy. And then her memory is over, and she says there is a huge earth shift. So apparently she died. And the destruction was very long ago of all Earth civilizations, and even this civilization that had been advanced. And the reason that there's no evidence of all these civilizations, you know, it's hard for us to believe because we're like, where's the proof? It's because they were destroyed. They're under the oceans. They're under the mountains. There was continent building and inundation to the point where things are buried under miles of dirt and mud and rubble and water and shifting sands of the desert. And this could easily be our future. All the evidence buried, nobody would even ever know that we were here or had been here. So she had help from very advanced beings from other dimensions, from space, she didn't know. And these guides would have helped anyone who wanted help, but many didn't want help. Some wanted it from ego, for the wrong reasons, or for power, or to build a spaceship like Elon Musk. They always survive. We always survive, but we have limited time in the physical, and we need to make better use of it. Many of these souls who died in that cataclysm have returned together now, and the subject Carol said that she could remember old knowledge. One of the reasons why she is a psychic, like she knows how to access time travel portals using harmonics and frequencies. And she'd been held back by a subconscious fear of disasters in her past life, and it was now time to release the fears and remember, and this is why she had been led to Dolores Cannon. And up to her sessions with Dolores Cannon, the job was to release whatever it is inside of her that protects the knowledge inside of her because of the fear, so that she can recall the knowledge at a safe speed. She will remember, and the knowledge will only be remembered for good uses. Many people alive today carry great knowledge in their subconscious, and it's time for a reawakening. And I'm going to stop here. This is the end of that chapter. Beginning of a new chapter. It's a good place to stop. I hate to run way long just to complete a chapter, and I don't like to stop in the middle of a chapter. So I'll stop now, and I'll go ahead and record the next video, and I hope you're enjoying this. Plenty more interesting stuff to come. And Slung Foil.